Okay, so picture this. You've got a patient in the ICU that got septic shock from perforated diverticulitis. There are signs that it's rough but stable, and then boom, we get some huge bleeding from the IV lines. And there's blood in the urine. The labs come back and they're a super big mess. The platelets are tanking, the PT and PTT are way up, and fibrinogen is low, and the D dimer is super duper duper high. You're looking at a classic setup for disseminated intravascular coagulation, or DIC. And this is one of the wildest paradoxes in medicine. Your patient is bleeding not because they can't clot or anything, it's because they're clotting too much. And that's the key here. That's the paradoxical key. So here's some associations. And what's happening is sepsis triggers a massive inflammatory response. And that unleashes the tissue factors everywhere. And the body starts to panic. And so it'll form tiny clots, microthrombi is what they're called, through the vasculature. But it's going to be laying down all that stuff like crazy and using up all the clotting factors in the platelets. And when the body actually needs to stop the bleeding somewhere important, like let's say a surgical site or a mucosa, it just can't. So you have a trigger, formation of widespread microthrombi, consumption, and fibrinolysis. Okay, and so what makes things worse is the body sees all these clots and it fires up fibrinolysis to break them down. And then you get elevated D dimers, right? That's the byproduct of all that clot busting. So you get the bleeding from the IV sites, the schistiocytes, you get these labs that are increased D dimer, lower fibrinogen. So here we have a practice question where we have a 56-year-old man and our answer is going to be fibrinolysis. It's secondary to your widespread microvascular thrombosis. That's what's going to be driving your bleeding. So we get all these labs, and so fibrinolysis that's secondary to this. Let's talk about why these wrong answers are wrong, and we'll see kind of see all this stuff. So antiphospholipid antibody mediated thrombosis. All right, so sure, it causes clots, yeah, but not bleeding, and definitely not with this lab profile here. How about ITP? Autoimmune platelet destruction. So ITP could be an answer choice. That's isolated platelet destruction, and you wouldn't see any prolonged PT or PTT or low fibrinogen. So that's not the answer. All right, how about like hemophilia A? That's a bleeding disorder not only with elevated PTT, but here, yeah, that's just not a good answer because there'd be no microthrombi, no schistiocytes. And so platelet adhesion defect, that's going to be a congenital issue. So it's not something that shows up acutely in a sick ICU patient. And so the big kind of explanation here, I'll scroll down so you guys can all see this explanation with some trap answers and why they're wrong, is you see sepsis, bleeding, elevated D dimer, low fibrinogen, and schistiocytes, think DIC. It's the ultimate example of the body's like sabotaging itself and then consequently causing a lot of like overreaction. So there we go. That's all there is to it. Bernard-Tillier syndrome, that's mild thrombocytopenia with giant platelets and no DIC features. Hemophilia A, isolated PTT, no thrombocytopenia. If you found this helpful, then be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next video.